I wanted just to explain a little bit about Manchester and why we chose to go with Alma. I'll explain a little bit about Manchester itself and the reasons why we were looking to change from our previous system. I'll talk a little bit about the Alma project. I think all Alma projects have some similarities and also some differences, but I'll explain a bit about our Alma project. And then I'll talk a little bit about what our expectations of Alma were. And we are now 1 year into using Alma, so I'll explain a little bit about how we feel now about Alma. And also just a few things that we learned from the project that we thought we could have done better. And perhaps when you're thinking about moving to Alma, you can learn from what we experienced. And then hopefully there'll be some time for questions at the end. Okay, just a little bit of background about Manchester itself. So Manchester is in the north of England. It has a population of 2.7 million, and it's a growing city. So it's gone up by about 20% over the past 10 years. We've got 4 universities in Greater Manchester, and the student population in the centre of Manchester is about 100,000 students. So it is a city that is dominated by its student population, particularly in the centre of the city. The university itself is the biggest university in the UK, apart from the Open University. So it's the biggest site university in the UK. We have 40,000 students and 10,000 members of staff. And the library itself is quite large, so we've got about 300 members of staff within the library. It depends which ranking table you choose, but obviously we choose the one that shows Manchester the best. So in the Shanghai World Ranking, we're ranked 5th in the UK and 41st in the world. And our faculties cover all the main subject areas. So we have a strong engineering and physical science school, very strong in the life sciences and medical sciences, and also a very large humanities faculty as well. So the library is one of 5 UK national research libraries. So we get funding from the central UK government to provide research services to researchers across the UK. We have 11 libraries across the campus of different sizes, various sizes. And our database is about 3 million catalogue records. We've also got a very large special collections as well, based at our central Manchester Deansgate Library. And just to give you some context, previously we were a user of a product called Talis, which was a UK system. I think all the subscribers to Talis were UK universities. But within the UK, it was at one stage the biggest library management system within the UK. We became an Alma early adopter in 2011, and we were a subscriber to Primo from 2010. Okay, so why did we decide we wanted to change or to think about changing? We'd been users of our previous system, Talis, for about 20 years, and we were one of the universities who originally created Talis. So it was created in the early 1990s by a number of universities who wanted to build their own library management system. And we were one of the founding organisations. So over 20 years, we'd built our processes and our workflows and our systems around Talis. And we felt that it was time just to step back and think about whether it was the right system for us still. We'd also just brought out a new library strategy. So it was a 3-year library strategy, and a lot of the focus was about accessing content and discovering content and supporting research through the management of information and data. And we felt that the current system just wasn't able to support us in doing that. So we wanted to find a system we felt could support our strategy and move forward with our strategy. We were also aware that the library management system market was changing. So products like Alma were starting to appear. Within the UK, there'd been a big piece of research about the future of library management systems, which was pointing to where Alma eventually appeared. And so again, we felt that it was right in terms of what was happening within the market to think about what opportunities were out there for us. Okay, so what were we looking to get from a new system? What were we looking for? Well, obviously, we wanted it to meet our requirements, and we had a long process of identifying what our requirements were, and we came up with a requirements document of about 300 requirements. One of the key things for us was integration of e-resources. So previously, we had no e-resources integration at all. We managed our e-resources through spreadsheets and databases separate from our library management system, and so we were looking for something that could pull together e-resources and physical resources together in one place, and that was crucial for us. We wanted to get value for money, and previously our system was designed in a previous world when library systems were very much standalone. And didn't integrate very well with other systems. And whenever we needed to integrate with something, we had to pay extra money. And so the cost of this system actually was considerable. So we were looking for a system which allowed us to pay a license and then to integrate with as many systems as we wanted as part of that deal. We wanted to improve how we integrated with other systems. So we wanted a range of APIs that would allow us to be able to integrate with all the different university systems that we have available. And we have a small team of developers within the university library, but we wanted to be able to take advantage of a network of developers in other countries, in other organisations that we could work with to develop services. And then finally, we wanted to work with a company that we felt understood our strategy and who had clients who were similar to us. So I said we were Talis customers, and Talis was a UK-specific product. Talis was very UK-focused, did a lot of work with public libraries, and we felt that its development wasn't going in the direction that we were going in. And so we wanted to work with a company that we felt were moving in the same direction as we were. And that was, again, a crucial thing for us. I guess one or two other things that we were looking for. The university has a strategy to move to the cloud where possible. So whenever we buy a new IT system, we first of all ask whether it can support cloud infrastructure, and if it can, then we will go with that as our first choice. And so that was one key thing for this service. We saw it as a chance to review everything that we had done in terms of processes and workflows. So I mentioned that we had 20 years with our previous system, and we felt this gave us the opportunity to just step back and think again about how we did things, and just to look at our workflows across the whole library and to change those, take the opportunity to change those. We wanted to simplify circulation. So we have 11 site libraries. Every site library had its own rules and its own policies and its own way of working. And it made our lives, particularly in the IT team, very difficult and very complex. So, and for our students who were using different libraries, every place was different. So it was a chance to try and simplify that. And we also wanted to develop new services. So our previous system controlled what we could do, and we wanted to be able to break out of that and to develop new services around the system. And then finally, to deal with data quality. So we'd had 20, 30 years of data being created to different standards in different ways. And our previous system was quite tolerant of that. It would accept bad quality data quite happily. And we didn't want that to be the case anymore, so we wanted to be able to deal with our data quality issues as well. I won't go into too much detail here, but just to say that we did go out to a full European Union tender as part of our procurement. We pulled our requirements together in a number of ways. So within the UK, there is a document that acts as a core specification. So it gives you a foundation to build your own requirements. So we started with that. We spoke to other universities who were going through a similar process. And then we held a number of workshops with customers and with other staff to identify what our requirements were. And at one stage we had about 600 requirements, and we got those down to about 300, 250, 300, which I think probably was still too many. I would recommend you get them lower than that. We were open to a commercial system or an open source system. We were willing to look at either option. And in the end, we interviewed 4 organisations, shortlisted 2 organisations, and we awarded the contract to Ex Libris at the end of 2011. And the whole process took about 7 months from deciding we wanted to look at what the options were, to going through the procurement, to signing the contract. So it was fairly quick, I think. The risks for us, previously we were the biggest customer of our previous system supplier by a long way. So we had a lot of influence, and we could pretty much say what we wanted, but they were quite a small organisation, so they couldn't always deliver what we asked for. So they were very good at saying yes, but not very good at actually giving you what they said they would give you. Whereas we knew that moving to Ex Libris, there are lots of organisations the size of Manchester, there are lots of organisations bigger than Manchester. And that was part of the attraction. We wanted to be able to work with people who had the same kind of requirements as we had, and we could speak to other clients of Ex Libris directly and work with them. That was a big attraction. But we were also aware that we were no longer this, we have in the UK the saying, a big fish in a small pond. So we were no longer the biggest client. When we signed up to Alma, it was an idea. It wasn't a finished product. It was quite a long way towards being a finished product, but it wasn't finished. This was back in 2011. We've been live for a year, so it is now very much a live product, and we use it across all our services now. So that's changed. But when we signed the contracts, that wasn't the situation, so there was a risk there. The UK specific functionality when we signed up hadn't been developed, and that was part of the attraction of joining at that point. It was our chance to be able to influence the UK functionality, but we hadn't seen it. So again, there was a risk there that the functionality wouldn't deliver what we wanted. There was a risk around Primo, and so we already had Primo before we signed up to Alma, but it was our second interface. We had a traditional library catalogue interface as well, and we had Primo alongside that. And so we would be replacing our old library catalogue with Primo. And again, there was some risks there, and I'll come back to that in a little bit later on. Okay, so the project itself, we spent about 9 months as an early adopter. And during that 9 months, we spent a lot of time working with Ex Libris and our other early adopter partners to design the UK functionality, particularly around resource sharing, integration with access control, so the way that we control students coming into the library through gates. In the UK, we have a reading list system, which a lot of the universities in the UK use, so integrating with the reading list system, and a few other UK-specific areas. Ex Libris were also working on new functionality across Alma generally, so working with them on those developments. And then we also spent a lot of time on the workflows, so starting to prepare for Alma coming in, thinking about our ideal workflows and how we wanted to change what we were doing, and working on data quality, a lot of time trying to improve our data. Okay, the project plan, just to give you a feel for what a project looks like, and I think ours was fairly typical. I think there have been projects that have been shorter, there are projects that have been slightly longer. I think we were somewhere in the middle. We were coming from a non-Ex Libris system, which made it slightly more complicated, I think, so we had a little bit longer, but still a fairly quick project. So we started in October 2012 with a Kickstart meeting, and this was an excellent session. Ex Libris, all the Ex Libris team come to your library, meet your local team, and you agree what the project will look like. And at this stage, there was quite a lot of negotiation and conversation about the timescales and the project. But at this meeting, you agree what the timescales will be. And at that point, after that, those timescales are committed to on both sides. So at this meeting, we agreed that we would go live on the 23rd of July 2013, and on the 23rd of July 2013, we did go live. In November through to January that year, training was provided to those library staff who were working directly on the project. So they were shown Alma for the first time and taken through the different functional areas of the system. And then in November, we were given access to the Alma sandbox. And this is a version of Alma which has got standard Ex Libris test data on it, not your own data, just standard test data, and is configured in a standard way. So it just gives you a feel for the system, and you can start to play with the system. January to June, we worked on our workflows and our policies. And in February, so this is about 4 or 5 months before you go live, you have to give Ex Libris the configuration that you want in the system. This can be changed, but they want to know how you want the system to be configured about 4 or 5 months before. In March, we did our first data migration, and then we did the final data migration in July. We also ourselves, we chose to do some usability testing of Primo. We were aware that Primo was going to become our only interface, our only library catalogue. And so we did some usability testing with an external company just to pick up any issues around Primo that we needed to deal with. and there were a few things that we changed as a result. And then in April, so this is 3 months before we go live, you get access to a production version of Alma. So this has got your data and also your configuration. So for the first time, you see how your data looks and how the configuration decisions that you made appear in Alma. And we had a lot of problems because our data, although we'd worked very hard to improve our data, there were still lots of issues that we had to deal with. So this gave us a chance to see the mistakes that we had made and to correct the data. And also with the configuration, we'd made some guesses about the configuration, but in some cases we were incorrect, and so we needed to make some changes. And then in May, so 2 months before we go live, Ex Libris come back to your university and spend, in our case, they spent 3 days with us at a workshop. And this is really your workshop. You can do whatever you want. So any problems that you've had, you can concentrate on at this workshop. And this, I must say that this was the best part of the project. We solved more problems in 3 days than we had over the previous 2 or 3 months. We were able to sit down with the experts within Ex Libris and just resolve some of our biggest problems. So that part of it was excellent, really good. In June, we provided training for all our users in the library, and we did this training. So the people who had been involved in the project, and we had representatives from each of our different areas across the library, each of those people provided the training to their staff. And by then they knew the system very well and were able to deliver that training in a relevant way to those people. And again, that worked very well. And then during July, we switched over to Alma. And what's this look like? So on the 6th of July, we froze acquisitions and cataloguing. So at the start of the month, you can no longer use acquisitions or cataloguing in your old system, and you send Ex Libris the data from those areas of the system. You can carry on using circulation throughout July, right up to the Friday before you go live with Alma on the Monday. And on the Friday, there is a freeze on circulation, and you pass your circulation data to Ex Libris. And then on the Monday, we went live. So we planned this date back in October, and we went live on the day we said we would. Primo with Alma, we went live on the 26th of July, 3 days later, which again is the date that we'd agreed at the Kickstart meeting in October. So I have to say, overall, the project ran very smoothly. We met all of the milestones throughout the project. We had lots of issues around data, around configuration, but we had the chance to put those right before we went live. Okay, so we've been live for a year. How are we feeling now? I think what I would say is that I think rather innocently we felt maybe the project would finish in July, August, September last year. And I think in reality, for the first year, you are getting used to a new system. You're adjusting your workflows. You're still correcting data. You're still really trying to understand how to get the best out of the system. And I think maybe it's only 12 months later that we feel, certainly, we feel now that we are in a comfortable place with Alma. And we're thinking now about how we can greatly improve things and take full advantage of the system, rather than just trying to put in place what we had before. So I think now we're starting to look forward much more. So in terms of what our expectations were before we started the project, e-resource management is working really well. So I say one of our key things was to get a system that managed e-resource and print within the same system. And that certainly has worked very, very well. And we have a very good e-resources workflow in the system. And it's actually resulted in the two teams who work on e-resources in our collection management team and in our IT team working much more closely together, because you can design a workflow in Alma, and all the information that the teams need down the workflow is there waiting for them, and that just wasn't the case previously. So it's really improved how we manage our e-resources. The majority of the requirements that we specified are in place now. There is some functionality is still not there. There is a new release every month, and I'll come on to that in a second, but you get a new release every month. And at the moment, the release notes are about 100 pages, 120 pages of new functionality every month. So it's a product that is becoming bigger and bigger all the time, and new functionality is added. But there are still one or two gaps that we are waiting for that are due. So the predicted journals issues is due in 2015, so next year. And we still have some elements of resource sharing, UK elements of resource sharing to put in place. But the vast majority of functionality that we wanted is now there. Library staff are now getting used to the system. So I say for the first 12 months, it really was feeling uncomfortable for some teams, just because they were so used to the old system. I think probably the people in cataloguing, people in acquisitions, very much from the first day felt very happy and comfortable with Alma, and felt it was a major improvement on their previous system. Within circulation, within fulfilment, less so, and I think partly that's because they're the people that deal with the students directly, and any problems or issues with the system or with our data or with our configuration, they experience, and so they found it more difficult. But now, 12 months later, they're very, very happy with the system. I think we underestimated the impact of Primo, and Primo being our only interface. So I mentioned we had a library catalogue alongside Primo, and we thought at the time that our customers used both interfaces for different things. But I think what actually was happening was that half of our customers were using Primo and half of our customers were using the old library catalogue. And when we took away the old library catalogue, half of our customers suddenly used Primo for the first time, and we didn't really support them very well in doing that. So I think that was a big lesson for us. And the whole concept of a discovery system for some of our academic staff in particular, particularly in humanities, they find very difficult to deal with. So we've had to make some compromises around our discovery system and recreate a traditional library catalogue for them, so they feel more comfortable with the discovery system. The APIs, the majority of the APIs that we needed initially were there. The current APIs are currently SOAP APIs, and they're being replaced by RESTful APIs. That's an ongoing process over the next 12 months. But certainly, the APIs that we needed, we were able to use from day one, and I'll show you some things that we were able to do. Value for money, certainly we've reduced the number of systems that we have had to subscribe to and support. So there has been a real financial saving for us here. We did have additional costs during implementation. So we mainly managed the resourcing of the project through existing staff. So people carried on doing their normal jobs as well as working on the Alma project, but we did bring in a person to support acquisitions and cataloguing, which was an extra cost, and that was worth doing just because of the data quality issues. We really needed somebody just to focus on data quality, so that's why we did that. Integration with systems. So this is just to give you examples of what we've been able to do so far. So we have a student portal, which is based on uPortal, which is an open source product, and students use the portal, which is called My Manchester. They use this for everything. So their email, our virtual learning environment, all aspects, their accommodation, everything is managed through My Manchester. So it was crucial that we could get the library into My Manchester. So from day one, we were able to use Alma APIs to allow students to manage all of their library account through My Manchester. So they can renew books, they can reserve books, they can pay fines, they can manage their contact details and their PINs through My Manchester, and that's worked very well from day one. We have a finance payment system. So if you have fees or fines to pay, there is a central university system which students use. This integrates with Alma through the Alma APIs. So the finance system looks at Alma and identifies how much of a fine a student has, pulls it back into the fines system. A student pays the fine, and that goes back to Alma and counts as a credit in Alma. And again, that's worked from day one. The user data. So this is a user screen within Alma. You have a number of options, and I'm sure Tina will explain a bit more about this in the demonstration, but you have a number of options, but we've chosen not to use Alma to actually manage the data. So we take all of the student and staff data from the university systems. So if the student wants to change their address, they go to the university system to do that. And then the Alma uses the APIs to get a real-time data feed with those changes. So we don't make any changes at all to the data in Alma. Everything comes through from the university systems. And again, that's worked from day one, and it works really well. So there's a delay of a minute, 2 minutes before the data appears, whereas previously on our old system we were using file transfer, and we did 4 transfers a day, so the data was often out of date. So this has worked very well. We have laptop and tablet lockers, so students can charge their laptops or their tablet devices, and this is integrated with Alma. So in effect, they borrow a locker, put their tablet in, charge it, and then return it from Alma, and that's worked well. The integration with Primo, I think, is very good. So we used Primo before Alma, and the integration with our old system was okay, but it's no comparison to how it integrates with Alma. This works very well. Our university finance system, we use Oracle, and we integrate with Oracle. So any orders that are placed in Alma, those orders get passed through into the Oracle finance system, and again, that was in place from day one. And then working with Ex Libris. So I said we wanted to work with a company that we felt understood where we wanted to get to. And I guess so far I feel that has worked well. When you look at the Alma roadmap, a lot of the things that they're talking about are things that we want to be dealing with. So using analytics to be able to predict things that might happen in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, to spot trends. All of that is starting to come through into Alma Analytics now. Working in the community zone and sharing data with other institutions. Starting to think about digital object management and how we manage digital objects more effectively. And thinking about new licensing and new acquisitions models. All of those are things that are part of the Alma roadmap and are things that we would have wanted to do as a major institution. And we've also started to develop networks outside the UK, which for us has been a huge advantage to be able to work with other universities of a similar size and a similar profile to Manchester outside of the UK has been a big advantage. I mentioned the cloud infrastructure, and this has worked well. We were slightly nervous about this, to be honest. It was the first major cloud infrastructure project that we had within the library, but certainly it has proved to be very reliable. We've saved a lot of time on local management. So my team, who previously were spending a lot of time on managing servers and carrying out upgrades, can now focus on things like working with the APIs and developing new services around the APIs, working on Alma Analytics, things that previously we didn't really have the time to do. I mentioned you get a monthly release cycle, so every month you get a new release of Alma with a huge amount of new functionality in it, which happens automatically, and that does mean you have to change how you work quite a lot. So you have to anticipate that this new release is arriving. You have 1 week to look at the sandbox and to work out what's changed and to test and to pick up any issues. But you just have that week, and then Alma goes live at the end of that week, regardless of what you think. Now that has worked fine. That we've had a couple of issues where things have stopped working. And Alma Ex Libris have issued a hotfix straight away, and that's been fine. But on the whole, it's been very smooth. It's really been a case of understanding the new functionality and starting to think about whether you want to take advantage of it. That is the main thing you need to consider. We've had a few speed issues just because it's a cloud service, connection is over the internet. And so maybe on our access gates, the delay used to be a fraction of a second. Now it maybe takes a quarter of a second sometimes before it reads the student's card, but the impact is pretty much zero. So on the whole, the speed has been absolutely fine. We carried out a lot of reviews of our workflows and processes. I won't go into too much detail because I'm running out of time, but just to say that was a very important part of the project, and I think now we have, particularly around e-resources, got a really solid workflow in place. We have simplified our circulation rules, so we've just gone over to semester loans, so students can now borrow a book for the whole of the semester, and that's standard across all of our 11 library sites. And actually Alma has been the real driver for making this happen. We've tried for 20 years to get site libraries to change, haven't been able to, and actually Alma has allowed us, sometimes by blaming Alma, sometimes by saying, Alma needs to work like this. To be honest, not always true, but it helped us to be able to get the change. So we now have semester loans which work really well. The students think it's fantastic. They don't need to bring their books back every 4 weeks. The fines have gone down, which is good for the students, is bad for the library, but we chose that because it improves the student experience. So yeah, that side has worked really well. Data quality, we had a real issue really with getting the data to a good standard. Entirely our problem, entirely our fault. 30, 40 years of difficult data to deal with. And Alma very correctly expects data to meet certain standards. And our previous system was a lot more flexible. You could break the rules much more, and so people did. We did a lot of things that we shouldn't have done really, but it was easy to do in the old system. Whereas Alma, quite rightly, expects certain standards to be followed. So we're still having to work quite a lot on the data to put things right. But I think we're going to be in a much better place when we finish that work. Okay, so just lessons learned. For us, don't underestimate Primo. If you are using a traditional library catalogue and people are used to that, then some of those users will find the move to Primo difficult at first and expect that. And there are things that you can do, I think, to make that much easier for people. Try and understand Alma functionality as much as you can. I think now you're in a very good place because there are lots of people using Alma. That wasn't the case when we went live. And so take advantage of speaking to as many people as possible to understand how Alma works before you start the project, and that will help you a lot in making decisions during the project. Yeah, deal with your data quality issues if you have any. I'm sure you don't have very many, but if you do have any data quality issues, deal with them as much as you can before the migration. And simplify your circulation rules. So we did a lot of work on this, but not enough. So do as much as you can to simplify your circulation rules, and then you'll have a very happy systems team who will be able to support you without having to create lots of complicated rules. Alma can support this, but it's much easier to maintain if you keep it fairly simple.